Hi there. Thanks for joining me today. I would like to show you how to make a fairly easy dish. It's called Moroccan stew. I've chosen it because it's something that my family really enjoys, and it goes right along with our diet. We follow a whole food, plant-based diet. We're also gluten-free. This dish is by no means authentic if you're looking for Moroccan food. This is just something I like to search recipes on the internet and then kind of change them up a little bit. So as my husband said, I don't usually follow a recipe for very long. And this one actually is served, we're going to be serving it over brown rice, but it's also delicious over couscous. So first I'd like to just show you what the ingredients are that we're going to be using tonight. Okay, so here are the ingredients that we're going to be using tonight for our dish. First we have some sweet potatoes, and as you'll see they're cut into small cubes. Next we have some cauliflower, which is also cut about the same size cubes, you'll see. Then we have some zucchini, also cubed. We've got some onion and some red pepper. Then we're going to be putting in some spices. So we've got some grated ginger, fresh ginger root, a little bit of garlic, and then we've got four different herbs here, seasonings. We've got cumin, coriander, turmeric, and cinnamon. We'll put in some chickpeas, and then we will add some light coconut milk. This is probably the only part of this meal that is not truly a whole food. It is slightly processed, but this is still fairly close to the way nature intended these vegetables to be made. Then lastly, we're going to be putting in some craisins and some cilantro. One of the things I love about this meal is the colors. Not only does it look wonderful once it's put together, but also it's important to know that the different colors represent different nutrients in our foods. So that's one of the reasons it's very important to eat when they talk about eating the rainbow or eating that large variety of colors of fruits and vegetables. So there's different phytonutrients in orange produce, and they're different than what you find in red or green. So it's very important that when you do put foods together that you try to incorporate some color, because you'll be getting more nutrients from your food that way. So now we're going to go ahead and put it all together. Okay, so I've got my burner on, and the first thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to put a little bit of water in the bottom. And this is a nice tip that I learned from a book that I followed that Neil Barnard wrote. And it really, I wasn't sure how it would work in the beginning because I had always used oils to saute in. And I thought that first of all it wouldn't taste good, and second of all things would stick. And what I found was that that was not the case, that you can put in and saute your fruits or your vegetables and there's not any problem at all. And if you want a little bit of flavor added to it, you can always put a little bit of liquid aminos into it to give it a little bit more flavor. So we're just going to throw the onions in, and we'll mix that up a little bit. And then I'm going to throw in the sweet potato. And this is going to take a little while, and that's why you always want to start, when you're cooking, you always want to start with the most dense vegetables first. So the sweet potatoes are by far the most dense vegetables that we have. The onions are really just going to give it a flavor. So we're going to keep those two, let them cook. I've got it on a pretty high heat, and we're going to give that a few minutes until those are starting to cook. And we can see them starting to cook a little bit better. Okay, now, so the onions are starting to wilt a little bit, and the sweet potatoes are starting to get a little bit soft. We don't want to cook them all the way because we still have a lot more that we're going to add to this. But the next thing we're going to add is the cauliflower. So this is where it gets a little tight in my pan, but the cauliflower also is a pretty tough and big and dense vegetable, so this takes a little bit of time to cook. So it sounds like the water has pretty much evaporated in the bottom, so I'm just going to add more. And that's one of the nice things about cooking and using water, is that if things start to stick, you don't have to feel badly about adding more oil to the meal. So we're going to let that cook down just a little bit, and then we will go to our next step. Okay, so now the cauliflower has cooked down a bit, or not cooked down, but softened up a little bit. And the sweet potatoes are continuing to soften up. So next we're going to add our zucchini. And the red peppers. And this is where we really start to get the idea of the colors coming into play. So we're going to let that cook for just a minute, but before we do much more, I'm going to add the spices. So I'm going to put the ginger in. And ginger, grated ginger is a little bit stringy, so that's normal. Go ahead and try to get all the juice that you can out of there. Go ahead and mix that in. Try to separate it up a little bit. And what's going to happen is it's going to look like these spices are sort of sticking in one place or another and not really mixing well. But you'll see one of the last steps before we get to the end is adding the coconut milk. And that is just going to pick up all of those spices and give it a really creamy, spicy sauce. So it's really, really wonderful. It's starting to smell delicious now. Okay, and I'm going to put in the spices. So this is the turmeric, cumin, coriander, and cinnamon. And again, it's going to look like it's sort of sticking to some pieces. Some pieces of the cauliflower especially are going to look like they're caked in the spice, but once we get the milk in there, the coconut milk, everything's going to meld together very nicely. Oh, one more thing I forgot is the garlic. We'll throw in the garlic. And I really like to use a press. Some people use minced garlic from a can or a jar, and I really don't like the prepared things like that because it just doesn't have the same kind of a flavor. So we'll go ahead and mix that in, and then I'm going to go ahead and add the coconut milk, and you'll see how it just melds everything together. I'm going to use the whole can. If you were only doing a half a head of cauliflower, or in which case I would use one sweet potato, I actually used 2 sweet potatoes in this, then you'd probably only want to use half that can. But this brings out a really, really nice sauce. You can see the turmeric is really giving it some nice yellow-orange flavor to the sauce. And then we'll go ahead and put the garbanzo beans in. Those also were canned. I do that for simplicity, but normally at my house I like the dried beans that I'll just rehydrate and cook up myself. And you can put more beans in if you like beans, if you like it to have more garbanzo beans. I'm just putting in 1 can. You could put 2 cans in here easily. Now you've noticed there's no salt in here. You really don't need to put salt in. I don't put salt in. I put salt on the table. So if people want to add more salt, they can, but this dish doesn't really need it. So that's all mixed together. And then the last couple of ingredients I like to put in are these are the craisins. And this, again, one of the recipes that I found said to add some raisins to it. I actually prefer craisins. And again, these are fruit juice sweetened. If you buy it just at the grocery store, very often times they're sweetened with sometimes even high fructose corn syrup. So you kind of want to stay away from that. Turning this down a little bit. And then the last ingredient is the cilantro. So, and I love cilantro. Now, a lot of people do not like cilantro. So this is one of the things, if you don't like it, if you're not sure you like it, or if you have guests that maybe don't like it, or family members, then you can always serve this on the side and just put it on the table. And people can put their own on. But I'd probably just give this another minute or two, and then it's going to be ready to serve. And it's just a nice, flavorful, whole food, plant-based meal. And it really is filling, and it's got plenty of protein in it. It's got the beans. I actually, you can't see it, but I have a pot of rice cooking in the background, and that'll be ready probably about the same time this is. So that's it. And that is your Moroccan stew.